Christians are not possessed. Christians are oppressed. Well, let me explain something to you, all right? This possession, oppression thing has got to stop. It's demonic activity. Now, the only difference, I think, between a possessed person and an oppressed person is when you're oppressed, you know what's going on and you're really in pain. When you're possessed, you probably don't know what's really going on, all right? So I will agree that Christians cannot be possessed, but let's not get hung up on that. Let's talk about what's the doorway. Okay, for instance, think of it as a snake invasion, all right? A possessed person has snakes in their house, okay, inside, living with them. But folks, most Christians who are oppressed have snakes in their yard. So let me ask you a question. If you've got snakes in your yard, are you going to leave your house without worrying about getting bit? Or is anyone going to come and see you because you have snakes in your yard? No, because you have snakes in your yard. So we're going to drive those snakes out of the yard. We're going to find out tonight about the demonic activity, whether it be possession or oppression. We're going to deal with both of these topics, okay? Now, as Christians, we need to understand that we have the ability and the power to forever evict a demon. Now listen to me. Evict a demon permanently, lock the door, and the demon never comes back. All right? The demon will never return. Matthew 12, 43, 45. Now, the scripture here is talking about a wicked generation, but this is very important for us to understand because I think it's a very good example of what happens when we evict a demon and he decides he's going to come back and take over. Verse 43, when an impure spirit comes out of a person, it goes through different places seeking rest and does not find it. Then it says, I will return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the house unoccupied, swept clean and put in order. When it goes and takes with it, 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and live there, and the final condition of that person is worse than the first. That is how it will be with this wicked generation. This is an example of how the generation, I mean, look at our society now. Look at it. You talk about they didn't bring just 7 demons. They've got a whole, army of, Black Lives Matter and militants. I mean, this is all, it's all over the place, right? But I want to talk about you and I spiritually, of how we can take a demon, evict it, cast it out, lock that door, and that demon comes back. He could have 100 other demon spirits with him, but he ain't going to get in. He's going to say, okay, boys, we got to go home. All right? We got to go home. So my question is tonight, what is your demonic doorway? What is the doorway that the demons are able to enter? Is it, drugs, alcohol addiction, pornography, bitterness, gossip, jealousy, fear? Here's a big one, worry. That's a big one for me, because when I worry, it brings in everything else. I start worrying, it brings in fear. It brings in bitterness. It brings in, you want to have a swig of this or a hit of that or whatever. I don't, but it makes you feel like that. Jesus dealt with worry. That's a demonic doorway. When we sit and we start trying to figure things out on our own with no resolution, and that's what worry is. When you keep thinking about something that has no resolution, it just goes right around the circle. So what's some popular ways the demons get through your door? Number one is your home. That's where you live. That's where each and every one of us live. That's our domain. Demons love our homes because that's where we sleep at night. And this is where demon activity is really ramped up, okay? Your television. Now, if you don't have a TV, but you got a computer, and on that computer, you've got all this stuff we've been talking about, all these programs, Netflix, and all this other garbage, that's how it enters through the eyes, into the mind. We have the mind of Christ. Social media. People that we live with. You say, David, I can't help it. I live with it. Well, Yes, but you see, you have to understand that you are a child of God and that you are under a protection, but you cannot blatantly put yourself out there, okay? We must use discernment. Objects. Has anyone given you objects that you don't know? These, and we talk about cursed objects. I've got a special on David Heavener TV on cursed objects. Me and Stephen Bancars talk about this. Okay, you can go there and find out the different objects in your home that could be cursed. Here's a big one, folks: medication. Okay, you see, demons get through our mind, into our mind of Christ, but instead of dealing with it spiritually and supernaturally, Big Pharma comes along and pops a pill. We take it. It numbs us out. And most people now, many Christians, are medicated. And the demon loves medications because when we are medicated, it distorts and numbs our mind of Christ. Sickness. Sickness is a doorway. How can it be a doorway? Well, my next guest we're going to be talking to had postpartum depression. And we're going to find out what postpartum depression had to do with her being possessed by a demon. I said possessed, not oppressed. We're going to talk to her about that. And postpartum, did it have anything to do with the demon entering into her? Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Even if it didn't, we're going to talk about how sickness plays a part in demonic activity, whether it's around us or in us. My guest is Linda. Linda, you there with me?
Yes, I sure am, David.
Good.
Hello.
Good to have you.
Thank
Linda, you had a baby. You had postpartum depression. And
it was my second baby.
Second baby. For those of you guys who don't know, postpartum depression is like guys like me. It's when a baby, it's called baby blues. It's after a woman has a baby and there's a depression. Okay, so you had postpartum depression, but something happened when you had that. Tell us what happened.
Well, I realized I was so weak. I mean, when I look back on it, I was weak spiritually, physically, emotionally, in every way. I was feeling very weak. And I was reaching for my vitamins one night. And I thought, okay, these vitamins maybe will help strengthen me. And as I was reaching for my vitamins, I sensed something around me. And I just said it out loud. I said, come on in. And I don't even know what prompted me, but I said it. And when I said, come on in, it turned out that it was a demon. And I knew it was a demon because what happened was, I remember my baby started crying and my husband was already in bed. And when I went to him, my voice got so low. I could not have made my voice get that low. And what happened was this demon started talking through me and my voice was so low, but then I would come back. And I, for some reason, I mean, I had a sister that had an alcoholic husband. She said, you know, I think we've had alcoholism in our family. And I found out at this Al-Anon meeting about the Lord's Prayer. And so whenever I would come back, I'd start saying the Lord's Prayer, but then the demon would come back and my voice would get very low. And I'd point at my husband and I'd say it, you know, just say it like this. And he was so scared. He was going like this, like, what is going on here? And
Linda, let's put a pause on it 1 second.
Sure.
You're telling me a demon actually entered you. You were possessed. Is that what you're saying?
I was.
Possessed. Okay.
I know I was.
You had postpartum depression. Do you think the fact you were so weak, the fact you had the baby blues, do you think the devil used that opportunity to be able to enter inside of you?
I really do.
You do.
And at the time, I was not a believer.
Mhm.
And so looking back, I really believe I was just so weak in every aspect
Okay.
that it was very easy for this demon to enter me. Yeah.
So you know, Linda, many doctors, and I have several doctor friends. They'll argue, or they'll tell you and me that it's a chemical imbalance. It's a depression. That it's not a spiritual issue. Now, I want to read a few stats here for our gatherers so we can understand what's going on. 80% of the women have the baby blues. We're called PPD. 900,000 annually. But listen to this. 10% of the new fathers get this postpartum depression. Fathers get it. 50% of men whose wives suffer from PPD get it. Now, if this is just a chemical imbalance in a woman, how in the world does a man get it? Because he's not having the baby. So explain that to me. I know no one can explain it, so therefore it has to be a spiritual issue. And if it's a spiritual issue, that means the devil uses sickness and diseases, which are mostly spiritual, come from the spiritual place, to take authority. You were not a Christian at this time, right?
No, I wasn't.
Okay. But now, Linda, you went to church all your life, like even as a little girl, like you were telling me, like starting at 4 or 5 years old. Not only did you go to church, but you were in church 5 and 6 days a week. I mean, it was not
I was in church a lot. Yeah.
You lived in a church.
Yeah.
And how old were you when the demon entered you?
I was about 34 years old.
Okay, so if you started going to church, say when you were 4, and you were 34 when the demon entered you, you went 30 years without knowing the Lord, right?
That's right.
But going to church.
That's right. That's right.
So, okay, so let's go back to your story. We're going to hit the pause button, take it off pause. So the demon was talking through you, and you were quoting the Lord's Prayer. Yes,
I was. And I couldn't remember the last line. And I said that to my husband at the time. I said, help me. And my voice came back. I said, help me. I can't remember the last line. I can't remember the last line. And I had never heard him say the Lord's Prayer before. So I didn't even know exactly what I was saying, but I kept saying, just help me with the last line. And then this demon came back and said, say it, like it was daring him to say it. And he finally said the last line about the kingdom, the power, and the glory. And as soon as my husband said it, the demon left. And I mean, I praise God that the demon wasn't in me for, but one evening, because it was torment. Yeah.
Okay, so the demon was in you that evening, but the demon left after that evening. Okay.
It left.
But no one cast the demon out. No one spoke any words and did any type of casting out the demon, right?
It was almost as if the Lord's Prayer and saying that one line is what finally cast it out.
You know what?
We didn't even realize it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the power of God. God, I mean, that's God's power. Especially sometimes when we don't know, we don't have people around us that understand demon warfare, which most of it, it's just not available because it's not taught in the churches. Okay, so when did you become a Christian?
It was about 6 years. I'm trying to think. I think it was about 5 or 6 years later.
Okay, so during that time of you having a demon in you and you becoming a Christian, did you think you were a Christian during that time, or what?
What I realized was, looking back now, I realized that God was using that depression to bring me closer to Him.
Okay.
Because when I ended up in the hospital, a friend of mine sent me some tapes that the nurses let me listen to all day. And at the time, I didn't realize it was Christian music. And all I could hear was the music. I couldn't hear the words. It was almost like my spiritual ears weren't open. And then when I came home and I started getting well, I could hear the words. And later on, I found out that my doctor, my psychiatrist, actually was a Christian and worked with different clinics that were Christian. Everything he did, the time I told him the only thing that I could take was the 12-step program. And so when he put me in the hospital, he put me with nurses and everyone that knew the 12 steps.
Mm-hmm.
So I do believe, and I know, the 12-step program talks about a higher power. And everything was just pointing me to that direction until I finally did. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And what's interesting is God used that little girl that I had to actually, she was very instrumental in bringing me to Christ.
Okay, and we're going to talk about that, but I want to back up 1 second.
Yeah.
You went to church all these years,
Yeah.
and you thought you were a Christian. But my question, Linda, is how could you, not hear the Word of God and not really meet God, and yet be in church all your life? Can you explain?
When I look back at it, the church I was in, to me, was wasn't really a teaching church. I really wasn't getting to know the Bible.
Okay.
And it turned me off to Christianity, the church
what kind
I
of
was
church?
going to.
What kind of church were you in?
Mm-hmm. Well, some people say they look at it that it was a cult.
What was it?
And it was a group that called themselves B'nai Shalom, or Sons of Peace.
Okay.
And when I look back on it, after that, I decided, you know what? I don't even believe. I turned completely and said, I'm an atheist. I don't even believe in God. And then I came through and I said, oh, you know what? Maybe there is. So I became agnostic. So it was a whole process. Mm-hmm.
So it just tells you that it doesn't just people who come from the Catholic background or a very deep religious background. It can come from what you talk about, this B'nai Shalom, which really ties into Judaism. I don't want to get into that right now, but I wanted people to understand that where you were coming from as a person seeking God, honestly. So before we go, I want to ask you about baby blues, about postpartum depression. It's the leading cause of death among new moms. I don't know if most people know that. 10% of PPDs end in suicide or infanticide, meaning they kill their babies. All right. What advice do you have for a woman out there that's listening, or a grandmother that has a daughter that's having a baby? What advice can you give them if they are having a child and they are and the devil could use this postpartum depression? What advice can you give them?
Number one, pray. That was the first thing that I started doing, was praying. And at first I said, I don't even know how to pray. But then here I had the Lord's Prayer, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to start praying the Lord's Prayer. So that was my first step. I started praying. And then I noticed when I started praying, more and more women that started coming around me were Christian. Or they, were, and I sometimes say believers. So the first thing I did was started praying.
So are you saying that if a grandmother's listening to this, to go and lay hands on her daughter who is having a baby, who just had a baby, or if the husband's listening, I think we'll agree that we need to pray, folks, for women who are carrying children. You're talking 9 months. This is a major thing. And I believe the devil really gets into people's lives and really does a number into women's lives. And I just don't think that we as Christians take a pregnancy serious enough and understand it's the birthing of a new child. And if that demon knows that child is going to be a warrior for God, He does not want that child to be around. The child's going to be attacked even in the womb. So we need to lay hands, we need to pray, and we need to use the power of God.
They've made many, many movies about aliens, but the question is, are they angelic or demonic?
Why don't they want to acknowledge the supernatural?
A lot of the seminary education today, that when pastors are being trained, there's no emphasis on the supernatural, even though the Bible's a supernatural book.
As in the days of Noah, so it will be.
Yeah. And it goes down to, well, what is their ultimate purpose? Inaugurate the Antichrist.
If you're like me, and you're tired of organized religion, the same kind of preacher preaching feel-good sermons, I'm a mom raising 2 kids, and I want them to hear the truth. I'm a gatherer right here on David Heavener Live, every Monday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, where we learn what it means to be a real Christian, to cast our demons, heal the sick, and fight the good fight. I'm not famous, and I'm certainly not rich, but I am a child of the living God, and I stand on truth. I hope you'll join me and many others right here on David Heavener Live, where we learn to use our God-given power. I've come to chew gum and kick the devil's rear end, and I'm all out of gum.